Today on Politicking, turmoil in Egypt as the United States struggles to define the path forward. Immigration reform, it hangs in the balance. And what to do about leaker Edward Snowden. It's all next on Politicking with Larry King. Joining me on set is Michael Reagan, president of the Reagan Legacy Foundation and conservative commentator. Also the Democratic strategist Tanya Acker. She worked for the 2004 Kerry Edwards campaign. We'll get right into it, guys. The Washington Post called President Obama's response to what's going on in Egypt feckless. The New York Times said he's reacting with appropriate caution. Who's right?
Well, I will tell you, probably the Washington Post at this point. I think that everybody's looking at... I travel around the globe quite a bit, and the reality of it is the globe looks to the Washington, D.C. for leadership. And when they're seeing no leadership come out of Washington, D.C., the world goes into turmoil. Right now, you know, Egypt is in turmoil. You have a president who supported the Arab Spring, supported, you know, the getting rid of Mubarak, supported Morsi going in, free elections. And now he's kind of sitting in the middle saying, okay, there's a military, they don't want to call it a coup, but it was a coup. And now where do I stand? And he's standing in the middle, and I think people need him to make a decision.
What do you want him to do?
I want him to lead. I want him to lead. Well, at this point, I don't have, all the information, but the reality of it is you can't sit back and do nothing. You can't sit back and play golf. So you've got to sit there and make a decision. Am I going to go with the new guy that they want to bring in? Am I going to support the people? Am I going to work with the military? But the fact is, we give over $1 billion a year to that military. That gives us some oomph in the neighborhood.
You would accept, as long as you made a decision, you would accept whatever it was.
I think if he made a decision, I'd like to know what that decision would like to be.
I think that it is. I mean, Michael's right. It is the president's job to lead, but I disagree. It's not the president's job to lead the people of Egypt. And I think that it's very important that we do sit on the sidelines a bit. I mean, look, Morsi started this fight. This started last year when, after a democratic election, Egypt's first, he then said he was going to suspend judicial review. He said he was going to move forward with presidential legislation without any legislative oversight. The Egyptian people revolted against that. He questioned the peace pact with Israel. And so really, this is a movement that didn't just start with the military. This is a movement that was really generated by tens of thousands of Egyptian people who were watching their country go into decline.
But everybody, Larry, everybody knew. You knew. I knew, you knew, Tanya, everybody in the media knew, in fact, what was going to happen should someone from the Muslim Brotherhood be elected to take over Egypt. Knew exactly where it was going to go. They knew about Sharia. Why the White House was caught unaware that Morsi would do exactly what he did is beyond...
I don't think that the White House had, when you've got 52% of the Egyptian electorate, which turned out in favor of Morsi, that's 48% who opposed him, and that's a pretty sizable opposition. I don't really think it's the position of the United States government to go in and say, we don't like your election results. Now, as it turns out, look, we don't like your election results, but there's no way that we can maintain our standing in the region, which is diminishing rapidly, by telling people who want to vote for their own leaders and who want self-determination.
Stop the aid?
No, I would not stop the aid. I think that the aid at this juncture is critical. I mean,
that's the only thing you've got right now, the only card you have to play to try and bring some kind of a semblance to that area of the world. And, you've got that. You've got what's going on in Syria, what's going on in Libya, and all the other places in the Middle East.
An unstable Egypt is simply not an option. I mean, look, Egypt is our second largest recipient of aid after Israel. As Michael pointed out, they're getting about $1.5 billion of our dollars a year. To pull that money away would only put the country into more turmoil, and we can't afford that.
When they're in turmoil, who gets the money and what do they do with it?
Well, I mean, right now, obviously, the military is going to get the money. I can't suggest. I mean, I don't have any basis for saying that they're going to do a worse job of it than Morsi's government did. I mean, he was running the country on $1.5 billion a month deficit.
You think this was a military coup?
I think it was a military coup that was enhanced and really made possible by the large public opposition against Morsi. I really do. I think that Morsi started this fight.
Well, I think Morsi did start the fight, absolutely. The problem I have is if indeed there's not some kind of a semblance brought to this, do we now take the Muslim Brotherhood and have them combo up with Al-Qaeda and the others in the arena to make this world even less safe than it is today?
Just to take issue with Michael's point, while lots of folks in the Washington Post and others are suggesting that the president has been feckless and has stayed on the sidelines, I do not think it helps the process, and I don't think it helps our standing in the region if it seems like this is a coup that we support. I think it's incredibly important that the Egyptian people who opposed Morsi, who helped give rise to his ouster, that they realize that they're in charge of their destiny. We're not in charge of it. We're not running that country.
Now, Michael, I look at this, it's of worldwide importance, and I turn on American television, and they're talking about Zimmerman trial. Where are the priorities?
That's where we live in. We live in a National Enquirer world. Everybody wants to know the down and the dirty about the Zimmerman trial and what's going on in Hollywood and so on and so forth. And these are real issues going on in the rest of the world.
And why would you say to people Egypt's more important than that?
I think the Zimmerman trial is important. I think that Egypt is not getting the coverage that it should because, as Americans, we remain a bit insulated from the consequences of foreign policy. I think too many people don't appreciate Egypt's strategic importance, both in terms of providing us access, air and naval access for our assets into the Persian Gulf, in terms of its critical relationship in the Arab-Israeli seemingly never-ending conflict. And I think that those are narratives that just they don't really resonate with Americans. I think that we, fortunately or unfortunately, have been able to cocoon ourselves from foreign policy, but it's a false cocoon. It's a false sense of security. I think that to the extent that we don't appreciate how important Egypt is, how important a stable Egypt is, and I'd even go so far as to say a stable secular Egypt, until I just don't think that those are narratives that are really being driven home.
We do. We get caught up, as I said, in the National Enquirer type thing. We go from trial to trial, car chase to car chase. Because why? They get ratings. People tune into them. Why do they watch a car chase? They want to see the death at the end of the car chase is what they want to see. Now they're watching Zimmerman to see what's going to happen there, turn it into a race issue and what have you, which
That's
people all get.
That's the only reason it's an issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because
if this were a white killing of a white boy or a black killing of a black boy.
Never be on the news.
More with our panel after this. Does the media lead us or we lead the media? I mean, how do we know they get good ratings? How do you know you wouldn't get better ratings if you were?
Well, you're right. I mean, they latch onto something, figure this is what the people want to see, and they start.
Right, okay.
And you can't watch anything else.
We know that.
I think the Tour de France is more important than the Zimmerman trial.
Obama is not crazy about Karzai.
No.
We know that.
No.
Do we pull out of Afghanistan?
I think that we cannot pull out unilaterally. We can't pull out with some safeguards. I think that so much of the world is so frighteningly dangerous that I think quick, unilateral, ill-thought-out, short-sighted moves are exactly what we don't need any more of. We can't simply respond to what Karzai did this week or this month or last year or the last several years. I really think that it's important in terms of our foreign policy that we have a long-term plan, and I think that's one of the things that's been lacking.
Did another service person die in Afghanistan?
Well, yeah, and they die. And there's another issue for you. When George Bush was president, there was a count going on about every day. Now that you have Barack Obama as the president of the United States, you don't have that count. You have Zimmerman trial, you have all these other things going on, but you're not getting overloaded with Afghanistan or what's happening in Beirut today.
People get tired of any war. It's not who's the president. You get tired.
You're right, but going back to Karzai, when you deal with people in other parts of the world, not everybody's like Americans. Karzai's got to cover his posterior because he doesn't know if we walk out the door, he's in a lot of trouble. He's got to make sure the people on the other side of the fence don't kill him. So he's got to play both sides of the fence. You've got to understand that when you're negotiating in Afghanistan or in Iraq or in Syria or any place else. I mean, look what's going on in Syria. You have a situation where we're now arming the rebels. We're training the rebels. And what was it, a week ago? They beheaded a Catholic priest, but yet we're arming the rebels. What is our policy?
Oh. What do you do with what do you do? I mean, yeah. you're criticizing, but you're not offering a solution.
But again,
so
it comes down. It really comes down to the United States of America. Money why do we have the Camp David Accord? Why do we have it? Because Carter walked into that room, brought both sides to the table and said, okay, here's the deal. You're going to get $1 billion. You're going to get $1 billion. Don't go to war against each other. Go home.
And the treaty's lasted.
And the treaty has lasted. That's what we're missing in leadership. So whether it's Jimmy Carter, you know, with the Camp David Accords, or Ronald Reagan with Mikhail Gorbachev, you need a leader in the room that gets it, understands it, brings both sides in, and gets the deal done.
How would you respond to that?
I think that I agree with Michael, but I think that, you know, look, it's not a video game. It's not as simple as all that. And I think that I think that to some extent that really underestimates the extent to which a lot of the president's domestic opponents are really still connected around this issue of defeating his agenda, be it foreign or domestic.
And I think be against him no matter.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do believe that.
Let's take an area that moves right into that, an area in which your father supported, Obama supports. George W. Bush said that we've got to pass an immigration bill the other day, said the immigration system is broken. He predicted a comprehensive bill will pass. Don't you think we need immigration reform?
Oh, I think everybody agrees you need immigration reform. It's what immigration reform you, in fact, are talking about. And here's what Ronald Reagan would do. He'd pull everybody in and say, okay, here's the immigration package. Where are the areas we agree? For example, Ronald Reagan would never take children who were brought here by their parents illegally as babies, who have gone to the education system of America, and then want to go on to college and say to them, I'm going to kick your ass out of the United States of America.
The Tea Party is saying that.
Well, that's what the Tea Party, that's what the Tea Party is saying. You're right. But what I'm saying is there are people who use my father's name for their own agenda instead of looking at Ronald Reagan.
All right, let's agree.
But he would bring people and say, where are the areas of agreement? Write that piece of legislation, and I'll sign that legislation, and we'll deal with the stuff we don't agree with at the next meeting.
And to your point, Larry, what I think is that today's Tea Party Republicans would tell President Reagan to take his ideas and go somewhere with them. That I probably can't say on camera. I mean, I think that the Republican Party that Barack Obama, with which Barack Obama has to contend, is very different from the Republican Party with which Ronald Reagan had to contend.
Well, yeah, but you could make the same thing, too. You can make the same argument. The Democrat Party today would have a hard time dealing with a guy named John F. Kennedy. He would be too conservative. Reagan would be too liberal for his party.
Lindsey Graham, though, said that your Republican Party is in a demographic death spiral.
The Republican Party right now is having their own civil war, if you will, within the party. You're absolutely right.
Something your father said never should happen.
But you know, you have no leadership in the Senate. How many bills end up at the Senate don't go anywhere with Harry Reid? And he controls the Senate of the United States of America.
More from our politicking panel right after this. Couple of other bases with our outstanding panelists, Michael Reagan and Tanya Acker. Snowden, hero or traitor?
Oh, I would say probably traitor.
I wish I could give you a little more disagreement, but I'd have to call him a traitor. I think that there's a big difference between, you know, look, I think that I get the tendency to want to call him a hero. Nobody likes the government spying on us. We knew this was happening. We opened this door after 9/11. So a lot of it, I think, domestically is sensationalist, and I think internationally it's really dangerous. I think that leaking details of our cyber attack on Iran, which is not a friend, is dangerous and undermines us. I think leaking details of our interventions, our surveillance interventions on the EU is dangerous and traitorous, and I think that it's really put us in trouble with some of our allies.
Tapped, though, to protect security, do you?
Do I want my phone tapped? I mean, the reality
you don't want
is
people invading you, do you?
No, I don't want people invading you, but the thing with Snowden isn't somebody just invading me on that side. It's the information he's giving to countries who are not friendly to the United States of America. I don't think anybody's surprised that we're doing that. But to have somebody come out and give documents and say and do what he's doing, I think is outrageous. And I think it is absolutely traitorous, you know, what he is doing. This is, you know, like you say, it's not a video game. This is reality. and people can die through his reality.
And I think that, you know, I don't want my phone tapped either, but the mechanism for changing that is to not allow Congress, not to sort of give the government these broad powers that we were willing that we relinquished to them after 9/11.
Rick Perry's leaving the governorship. Is he going to run again for the president?
Well, I think there's a lot of people that hope he would like to run again. Maybe this time he'll be more ready.
I would love for him to run again.
From a Democratic standpoint.
Yeah.
Elliot Spitzer wants to be comptroller of the city of New York. Now, if he's elected and Weiner's elected, there is a second act in America.
Everybody, they all get second acts. Newt Gingrich got a second act after his affairs and the divorcing by fax. I mean, this isn't anything new. Mark Sanford just got a second act after his famous...
I haven't been able to hike the Appalachian Trail since he did that. My wife isn't buying it anymore. No, but we do that. We have a tendency. Maybe we need new people in politics. You know, instead of the old people, the old gang all showing up. But you're right. We are a forgiving nation for those kind of people, but I can't believe they'll ever forgive Weiner.
Okay, who's going to be the Democratic nominee for president?
Hillary.
No doubt about it.
I feel Hillary.
Will she have challengers?
She will likely have challengers. You know, let's see, maybe Tester. Maybe she'll bring a strong challenger on the ticket, hopefully. I want her to run. I'm excited for it.
Are you worried about her from a Republican standpoint?
No, I'm not worried about her at all. I think we have a great bench out there. I thought we did last year. Had a great bench. We have some great governors. You look at the states that are being run by Republicans who are all doing very well. So I think that our next nominee needs to come from those ranks, either a former governor like a Rick Perry or a sitting governor that we have now who's actually turned their state around, created jobs.
But it is, in a personality nation, Hillary is a personality figure. You would agree.
Well, she's a personality figure, but she still has Benghazi and a few other things she needs to worry about. And remember, what's going on in Egypt, what's going on in Syria, what's going on in Libya, you know, ultimately could tie to her coattail, which may end up be her undoing.
Something that Hillary has going for her in this is really the way the Republicans oppose her. I mean, I can't resist the opportunity since I'm sitting here with Michael. You know, the fact that they're making this whole age argument, you know, she's going to be too old to run. I mean, we all know that President Reagan was 69.
But both parties do this. I mean, gosh, for 4 years or 8 years, we were bashing George Bush. Now we're bashing Hillary or bashing Barack Obama. This is what 24-hour news cycle has done to the system that we have today, political system. It's a system of bash, 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 and we never find the good anymore. Ronald Reagan, look at his gravesite. Find the good in people. That's why Ronald Reagan was beloved by so many. Today, there is nobody trying to find the good in anybody because it doesn't get ratings.
Ronald Reagan had a low popularity rating when he left office. His numbers were way down.
At that point, I thought he was. You talked to Nancy lately? She won't have lunch with you if you say that to her. I mean, the reality is, but my dad, yeah, nobody's perfect and what have you. But look what he was able to accomplish. Even Alec Baldwin said to me, walking out of 24-Hour Fitness about 2 years ago, I miss your father. I said, you disagree with everything he ever stood for, Alec. Why do you say that? He said, because I want you to tell Nancy and your family this. I miss your father because your father had a good soul, and what this world is missing today is that soul.
Did he beat up any paparazzi? Thank you, guys. Thanks to our guests, Michael Reagan and Tanya Acker. You'll be seeing lots of them on Politicking in the months and years ahead. Let's turn now to social media and how it's covering and talking about what's happening in the political world. Joining me here is Aura TV's David Begnow, host of Newsbreaker and our social media expert. Social media was a driving force in the first revolution. This time around, it's leading to chaos and confusion at times in Egypt. What's going on?
Here's what's interesting. The Muslim Brotherhood, of course, which has been forced out of power with Morsi, Larry, for the most part, they are using Twitter to get their information out. They've lost all control of state TV, right? So watch this. The Twitter page we have up right now is the spokesman for the Muslim Brotherhood. He has turned to Twitter, and what he's done in order to prove what they believe is an atrocity by the Egyptian army is he has been, over the last several days, tweeting out pictures of what he says are atrocities. So you take this one, for example, of someone on the ground. They literally have been tweeting photos of dead bodies, maimed individuals who were coming into a hospital. There was reportedly an attack outside the Republican national headquarters in Egypt, the Republican Guard, where the Brotherhood says people were killed and they considered it a crime. So they turn to Twitter and they're tweeting out intensely graphic photos like this using the term bloodbath. But again, the point is they've lost control of state TV. They've now turned to social media to share their message with the world.
So there's always a source.
Absolutely.
All right, turning to Snowden. A Russian lawmaker tweeted something about Edward Snowden going to South America. Confusion followed. What do we know exactly?
This is kind of interesting. So within the last 48 hours, you know, Venezuela offered Snowden asylum, and they said, it's up to you to decide. So then, this week, there was a Russian lawmaker who sent out a tweet essentially saying he's accepted. It's official. That's the tweet. Come to find out, he heard it from a local television station. He didn't know it for sure. So what happened was, it was incredible. News traveled around the world from the West Coast, you know, to the west of America, to South America. Everybody thought it was official, Snowden accepted, and come to find out it was just hearsay. He heard it and he tweeted it.
So this is the downside of
Tweeterville. It is the downside, because so many important people, such as yourself, celebrities, politicians, are on Twitter, and so when they're verified, we take the information from them and we say it's true. This politician was quoted as being an official.
One other thing, Elliot Spitzer, I know when he announced he was running for comptroller in New York City, he went on Twitter immediately, right? How's that going?
Well,
he's got to get a certain amount of signatures.
Yes, well, so watch this. So he tells the New York Times in an interview that he's running, and then he sets up this page, Spitzer for NYC. But people initially think, well, it's got to be fake, so they start reporting it to Twitter as a fake account. Twitter suspends it. Come to find out, it was legit. So he was using Twitter as a mean. I mean, think about this. You've got a former attorney general, a former governor, disgraced, turning to Twitter suddenly as his main mouthpiece to the world. That is the one way he can control the information. But here's the best part. A chick called the Manhattan Madam. She tweeted, as soon as Elliot Spitzer announced, the Manhattan Madam announced she was running for controller, and she tweeted, "Happy birthday to me. What a great present. A chance to confront Elliot Spitzer in the debate. Davis for controller." This is the gal who says that she supplied call girls to Spitzer. It hasn't been proven, but that's what she claims. But nonetheless, can you imagine a former governor and attorney general facing off against a madam? And look, Spitzer, it's been interesting on social media to watch this. He went out in New York City the day after he announced, and people were yelling at him, "Where's your hooker?"
David, the world you covered is going a little nuts.
Listen, you're a rock star on Twitter.
Oh, who knew?
Watch it.
Thank you, David.
Yes, sir.
You can follow him on Twitter at David Begnaud and at Newsbreaker. And now, each week on this show, we show you a unique side of Washington. This week, our old friend CNN's chief White House reporter, Jessica Yellin, takes us on an inside tour of the White House press room to see where the reporters who cover the White House work. Take a look.
Hi, Larry. Welcome to the White House press room. Come on in. So this is the press briefing room. You've seen it on TV a million times. If you see it in person, it's probably a little less glamorous than you expect. This is the front row, obviously. This is the box I stand on when I have to do live shots because I'm not quite tall enough. I have to get a little bit of height if you want to be Jay Carney or the White House press secretary for a moment. That's what it looks like to be him. So this is our access to the White House right here. You'll notice the door is closed. There's one more level where we can walk up. After that, no access. This is built on the swimming pool. I think the story is this is Harry Truman swimming pool, and so there's really not a lot of office space. So when people come in here for the day, they don't have a lot of room to hang out, so they just hang out in the chairs. This is where the people who make the magic sit and monitor the magic. Back in the day, people would run with tape and run the tape right up to this deck and scream to everybody, "We've got the president," and hit play, and it would play out to all the networks at once from one of these decks. Now everything's digital. This is where the print journalists work and a lot of TV journalists, but this is the Associated Press. Nedra Pickler. Do you want to say hi to Larry King?
Oh, what an honor. You can see our very spacious digs here. We have 5 people that work here in the size of a walk-in closet.
This is the Reuters booth. Do you want to say hi to Larry King?
Hi, Larry King. We have a little bit of daylight, but not much.
It's better than the basement. We had a big leak in the basement. It smelled a little moldy for a while. This is where the photographers sit. You want to make friends with photographers because they have the pictures of all of our experiences. This is our cappuccino machine, which is famously a gift from Tom Hanks. He apparently came to the White House one time and was horrified we didn't have a coffee maker and sent this. I don't really use that. I go to Starbucks. This is what your White House press corps eats. I don't think the First Lady is aware of it. Most of these things are either sold out or don't work. It's just sometimes a little comical, because you have the entire White House press corps that thinks they're capable of pressing the white president for change, but we're incapable of updating our snack machines or getting ones that work. Come on down now. I'll take you downstairs to where I work, in the basement. Knock, knock. Can we come in? This is the CNN booth. This is the workspace of a White House correspondent. It can get a little noisy, and it can get a little cramped. I am embarrassed that Dan's side is much cleaner.
I always keep it clean.
You always keep it clean, but this is shameful.
No, I think they should that over there.
Well, this is the basement. This is filled with some of the best journalists. We are the ones who are not necessarily on the front row, but ask the questions in a very interesting way. And yes, because they've asked on the front row like the same question 5 times.
So back up to the light here. We all have to support one another, given that sometimes it's kind of hard to get that much information from the White House. It's a tough beat to cover. It's a lot of pressure. But I think everybody who works in this room considers it an honor and an obligation to ask questions on behalf of the American people. We all take a lot of heat because we're never doing the right job for somebody. Somebody's going to criticize how we do it or the way we're asking the questions. But it's a working newsroom. When you take up one of these seats, you're asking questions on behalf of the American people. That's not just a job. It's also an honor and a responsibility. And I think I'm very lucky to have this job and to have that honor and responsibility. Good to see you, Larry.
That's all for this week's Politicking. Thanks to all my guests. Join us again next week.